Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me on Their Fight Story. I have Mike Pulver with us who will be talking to us about Cage Titans and so many great stuff that's going to be happening. Mike, how are you doing today?
How's it going? How you doing, Iggy? Long time no speak.
Did I cut you off guard?
No, we're cool. No, that's cool. You did all right over COVID, keeping busy and doing everything.
Yeah, I tried. This is what I've been doing through COVID is trying to get all the fighters out there, share their stories because realistically, there are no fights happening. So I want to make sure that they don't lose their flow. People know who they are, where they came from. Just
Yeah.
like you. How did you start with Cage Titans?
Oh man. I feel like I tell the story. It's like one of those stories that you tell and you're like, stop me if you heard this story before. Um, but I mean, Cage Titans is like I used to always be like I played sports growing up and things like that, and I was always into fights. I'd just say, unsanctioned fights. When I was younger, and it was always kind of, if somebody was looking to scrap, like I was one of those guys that just was like always down. And I had a lot of friends that didn't like to fight, so like when they would run their mouths, I'd have to kind of jump in. So I kind of always had like a fighter a little bit inside me. But I played hockey and sports, and then when I was having my second kid, I was working at Mr. Tux at the time. We sold to Men's Warehouse. And if I stayed through the transition, they would give me a severance package and all that. And my wife at the time was pregnant with my second kid. And it was like, all right, I took some of the money. I got a heavy bag. I got a speed bag. I got an elliptical. And I just started working out on my own. I was 250 pounds at the time. And um, after some time, I lost some weight. I looked up local MMA gyms, and again, the clock's ticking in my head. It's like once you have one kid, you kind of like, like life kind of gets taken over by the kids. It's like once I have two kids, my life is over. Footnote: I have five now.
Exactly.
But it's like the clock was kind of ticking. So I started training at a gym, and then after a little bit of time, they were like, "Hey, listen, if you want to fight, um, this you could fight, and we'll get you a fight." So I think that was right around the time my second son was born, Matthew, and fighting once turned into fighting twice, turned in three times, and then the infamous AFO was
Mm.
looking for a venue to host a fight night, and I fought for them, and it wasn't a great experience, but it was kind of cool that they were looking for a venue. And at the time, after I left Mr. Tux, I went to another family-owned business, Lombardo's. So we had a venue, and they did boxing years ago, and then they got away from it. So they were like, Mike, if you want to try MMA, like we can bring this guy in, see how it is. And the event itself was a success with the AFO. We had a huge night on the bar. The Lombardos were really into it. One of their kids was a high school wrestler, so they really liked the combat sport. Unfortunately, AFO being AFO, they bounced the check. They didn't pay some fighters. Um, and then after the event, the owners were kind of like, well, you fought Mike. We have the venue. If you want to try to do this on your own, we would love to do more events, but just not with that guy.
Mm.
And out of that, Cage Science was born. And then here we are, 11 years later. It was like, maybe this will be one show, maybe it will be two shows, and then, three shows. And then Lombardo's did about $1 million renovation, and they were like, we're not doing this anymore. We can't spill beers on the rugs
Mm.
because fight night takes a tough toll on a venue. And I said, well, we've had a great run, but I'm going to try some other venues, and I'm going to keep going with this. And the rest is history, so to speak.
How did you get the name Cage Titans?
So oddly enough, it's tied a little bit to the AFO. So there was a guy who worked for AFO. Um, he came to me and is like, "Hey, I'd love to help you. I'd love to get involved. Like, I had some bad experiences with the AFO, but I really like the sport of MMA. I'm a huge fan." So like, he came to me and we were just kind of brainstorming one day, and he was like, he liked KTFO for obviously reasons, knock the F out. So he wanted to come up with a name, Cage with a K, Titans Fighting Organization. Um, and my background is marketing and sales, and I was like, well, are people going to be able to find that? Are they going to know to spell it with a K? I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I kind of liked the idea. So from there, we went to Cage Titans with a C. And then it was like, well, there's not a lot of FCs, Pride FC. Let's throw the FC in there. And that's kind of how the name was born. At the time, a guy named Anthony Petrie, he was a designer for Reebok, actually. He did sneakers and he's a graphic designer. He came up with the logo. And that's where Cage Titans, the name, was born.
Nice. Now, how have you been handling the pandemic, not being able to do
Horrible.
shows?
Horrible. Um, listen, I mean, a lot of people like, oh, Mike, what, you disappeared, things like that. And it's just like, for 10 years, like my who I was as a person was defined by Cage Titans. Social media is Cage Titans. Like I don't have personal social media really. Um, Anywhere I go, it's oh, Mike, what's up with the fights? What's up with Cage Titans? So it's like it really defined who I was for a long time. So during the pandemic, it kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of ground myself and be like, who are you? Like, yeah, I know it might sound kind of weird, but to say that, but it's just like who are you besides Cage Titans? I was managing my best friend's restaurant, Coop's Bar and Grill, and the pandemic hit, and it was like, there's no fights, you got no restaurant. Who are you? And I had to look long and hard at myself, and that's kind of what I did over the pandemic. My wife luckily works at the hospital, and she was able to pick up hours to keep us afloat. And I got to be a stay-at-home dad. I mean, and like I said, I had five kids, and for the first time, I will say for the first time, and I say it laughingly now looking back, but like over that pandemic, it was like for the first time I actually knew what it meant to be a father. And as crazy as it sounded, it took me 5 kids to realize what it meant and what was involved to be a parent and a father. So, I'm very grateful, as odd as it sounds. I was grateful for the pandemic because it allowed me to take a step back and realize, like, what is important. That's, family. They're going to be there for you no matter what. So it's helped me kind of get to that level during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's important because a lot of people kind of got lost in the pandemic. I mean, we're still trying to get through it, but I feel like this was actually a great time to know what's important in life.
Yeah,
take back,
yeah,
just take back that lost time because, like you said, you're a father with 5 kids, but you never really had all that quality time with your kids because you're working 24/7. You have all these other responsibilities, so it's kind of put a pause on your career, but it
yeah,
gave you that time to be with your family. And
yeah,
now,
yeah, it definitely did.
yeah,
Sometimes I want to throw them out the door, but but it's so right. And I thought I had that even with Cage Titans, because like you'll always hear me preach. We did our events on 10 weeks, a 10-week schedule, and I always would say the reason we do that, you have fight night, then take 2 weeks off, reconnect with your family, your job, because you all know that you weren't giving your job 100%, your real job, besides fighting, during your fight camp and stuff. If you had kids, girlfriend, like I always said, take those 2 weeks off to reconnect. But I probably wasn't practicing what I was preaching. Because my whole idea was you take 10 weeks, your first 2 weeks, you're kind of relaxing and you're recouping from the last fight. Then you're at week 8. And then it's like, now you're starting to trickle back into the gym and start trickle back into fight mode. Then you're at week 6 and it's like, all right, who am I fighting? So like, that was in my mind. That was what happened, but it very rarely did. It was literally Cage Titans nonstop. My phone would go off and I'd run to my phone. Every message I thought you had to respond to immediately, anything. So this just kind of like, oddly enough, my phone went dead and no one called. and it makes you realize when everything's said and done in life, all your likes and comments or your friends on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, at the end of the day, when all said and done, you really have a few select people that are your circle, and you need to make sure those people are important to you, and you carve time in. Don't get caught up in that hustle or bustle of life. And always wanting more, achieving this or that. It's like, yeah, you want to achieve certain things, but you have to have some sort of balance. I'm as we come into this next phase where Cage Titans is back open, I'm gonna have to do my part and to kind of realize what I used to be, and then what I became over the pandemic and better father and all that, and now blend those two and make sure that I just don't get caught up in that. So we'll see. You're on mute. There you go.
Okay. I was going to say that it doesn't change you because you're still going to be a great father. You're still going to be a great promoter. You're still going to be doing, your business with, the restaurant. It doesn't change at all. It's just going to be adjusting it a little bit because now you understand the value of each one. So now that
Yeah.
you know the value, you're not going to,
Yeah.
lose any of it.
It's just just as simple as being to your kids' soccer games or football games, and be a part of that, like when they get off the bus, or
Mm.
before I would work at the restaurant and then I'd come home at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'd be up till 3, 4 in the morning doing Cage Titan stuff, and then I'd go to bed, and it's like they get up in the morning and I'm not even like coherent. So it's just like I didn't see breakfast in the morning with my kids, getting them off to school, and and seeing how much that time means to them. So it's balance, and then it's also like just the realization, and kind of setting the tone in interactions with me personally and interactions with me as Cage Titans. It's like we live in a world where people want instant gratification.
Mhm.
Like if they call you, they expect you to answer. If you text them, like, why didn't you message me? Why didn't you call? Well, it's like they expect you to have your phone on you at all times, whether you do or you don't. It's just like breaking that habit. Like that's the world we live in, though. It's hard, but I try to set the expectations. Like, listen, if you message me, I'm not getting back right away. Like, I might take a day, it might take a couple hours. Like, I want to say I hate the world we live in, but it is just the world we live in. Like instant gratification and instant connectivity. And so I'm learning how to not like be so much about that. And you've known that in our interactions over the last couple of weeks. It's like, hey, we want to talk, and it's like, oh shit, I forgot to get back to Iggy. And then it was like, and then I was like a couple days later, oh yeah, hey, let's do this. And then like this week I was like, all right, pick 3 days, and I'm definitely picking one. And then I didn't get back to you. And then today it was like, all right, I got time tonight. And you're like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, it happens. Now, during the pandemic, how was the I guess the transition because you still went to some fights to corner
Yeah.
some fighters. How was that experience versus
It,
what you used to do?
it was fun, like people always ask me like, oh, like when like you said, I went to Brazil with Johnny Campbell. I went to Miami with Richie, and it's just like, I've established good relationships with fighters, and just by being, I guess, a nice guy, and just helping friends out, so it was interesting. I mean, when I went to Brazil, it was definitely interesting going to Brazil. I was lucky enough to go overseas to Europe before with Manny, to London and Germany, but going to Brazil was kind of cool. For anybody who's a fan of mixed martial arts, it kind of was born with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu down in Brazil. So it was nice to go there. You had the normal stuff, COVID tests. Then in Miami, same thing. Um, it was not really much different. I mean, I will say Florida was kind of like, I guess Florida, not like the rest of us, like they say. It was still middle of COVID. I want to say it was in February, and there was just masks were kind of optional. Like I was expecting to be like super social distance and people like sitting on each other's laps and standing room everywhere. Um, Brazil was Brazil. Like it really was. It was when we went there. It was the height of COVID, and they were really bad. And they actually recommended. Actually, a funny story. When we got there, when we were trying to get back home, it was like you can't travel to these countries if you're an American citizen, and Brazil was one of them. We were like, wait a minute, we're already here. How the hell do we get back? Like, what does this mean? And we obviously jumped on the plane, but yeah, it was cool. My mind's always going, and whenever I'm at an event, even when I was cornering guys in the UFC or I'm going out to the Contender or whatever that stuff is, like what do they do? Ooh, how can we implement that to what we do at Cage Titans? How would that help a fighter prepare for the next level? You've seen that we've done even like the press conferences in the back room.
Mhm.
Um, we kind of the way we shuffle the fighters right out of the lock out of the cage is very how the UFC did it. So like I'm always watching and trying to see what they can that I could take back from somebody and bring to us. So it was a cool experience. It was fun. I haven't cornered a local fight. Like I did have the luxury of corner manning in the UFC. I cornered, but I haven't really cornered at the local level because it's just most of the local guys that I know, I'm not going to go corner at CES or, there or one of those. It'd just be very awkward, I think. And it's a fine line. Like, you're friendly with these local fighters, but there's always a chance that they could still fight for you. So you're kind of the level where like, I don't want to publicly put it out there and be walking you out because like next show, if you're fighting for Cage Titans, oh, that the guy you cornered at a different show. Like, so during the pandemic was a little different. And Johnny Cupcakes, for that matter, is a lot different. He was a friend prior to Cage Titans. We played hockey together and stuff like that. So he was a friend prior. So I'm not, like, and then Richie fought his whole career with CES. He's our commentator. So it's like, come on, obviously I'm friends with Richie. So those instances were unique in their own right.
I was going to ask you how, like, if it would be a conflict of interest for
Yeah.
you to be cornering, because you were saying locally, but I guess nationally and internationally, it's a little different.
Yeah. I mean, it's odd. I mean, there's just no denying it. Like, Joe Giannetti, for instance,
Mhm.
when he made the Ultimate Fighter, he said to me, Mike, and I remember the conversation vividly. He's like, Mike, I've fought for you since I was an 18-year-old kid. Like, no offense to anybody else in my life, you're like the only real adult that I
Mhm.
know and I trust. So like, he got his contract for the Ultimate Fighter and like brought it to me at Coops and was like, can you read this with me and tell me if this is cool? Like, what should I do? And like, what am I getting myself into? Because remember, he was a 20-year-old kid. And, Manny was a similar situation. He's like, this is kind of like, I just like to fight. You're the only like businessman,
Mhm.
like MMA guy that I trust and I can relate to. So like, that's how that stuff kind of comes up. But JoJo, for instance, I was getting at is like, I cornered him on the Ultimate Fighter finale. Um, and then he lost and he came back to Cage Titans. So, um, that it's the situations are all
Mhm.
different and how people look at it. I've had guys be like, oh, I'm going to be, I remember Tateki when he beat Johnny Cupcakes. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I beat up your friend. And, in the cage when they fought for us. And I was just like, listen, man, you know, I can be friends with every fighter on the roster. I can be friends with one fighter and hate another one. Guess what? At the end of the day, I'm not in that cage. I'm not.
Mhm.
I'm not fighting. Jay Parent and Johnny Cupcakes had a huge rivalry, and I was friends with Johnny prior to that, and it was like I'm just friends with Jay now after like everything was said and done. It's like you guys are the ones fighting, not me. And I'm not taking sides. Like for me as the promoter, you know, I'm just trying to put on the fight and give you guys equal shine. A lot of times, why do you think we get a lot of these return out of staters like
Mhm.
Rob Fuller and so on and so forth? They're like, Mike, you're the first promoter that we weren't just cannon fodder. Like, and if we were coming in to lose, because obviously, like, we know that you're bringing us in to fight a local guy who has fans and sells tickets, they're like, you still made us feel special. You still shook my hand. You still walked me to my car or to the hotel, or you arranged rides. Being a friend or conflict, it's all how you handle it, and it's all the human being. You know, uh, there's some promoters that walk guys to the cage, and I wouldn't be doing that. But at the end of the day, you're transparent. Here's the information. I'm not withholding anything about
Mhm.
this fighter. Here's the information about you, and I pass it to each other. Besides that, if this kid's been at my kid's birthday party or not, it doesn't help him on fight night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Cage Titans has gone through a lot. I think, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been at the shows that I've
Been there
seen
forever.
the Yeah, I've seen just things that you normally wouldn't see. Um, I'm not even going to get into details, but how do you handle everything? Because I mean, I don't even know. I mean, as let's just say, like, I remember sitting.
I was gonna say, give me an example. You
Okay,
got.
well, I can't like. So
You can say something. I don't care if
okay,
it's
you
bad or
have
good.
the cage incident.
Oh, with the guy falling through the cage.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It's funny. We actually talked about. I talked about that with Connor Matthews. He was picking up tickets 2 days ago. We actually had a conversation about this. So come on, hit me.
No, I mean, how? Because I mean, I remember that happened, and I remember a friend of mine was actually the next fight, and I was
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, like I was like, I didn't even know how to react just watching it play out. I mean, but you're the promoter, and you have to, make sure that these fighters are okay. Then you gotta, take a step back, make sure that the cage is all set. There's like a lot that goes into that people don't get. They just think, it's a cage, but
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into everything and everything you do. It's like my mentality is you got to take everything that happens and take emotion out of it
Mhm.
and keep a level head because guess what? Emotion doesn't make the problem go away or fix it. And losing your temper or cool is not going to make the problem go away. Still got the problem at hand. Whatever the situation is, like, it just, you have to react and you have to have a good calm head about yourself. I think it goes back to, I played goalie growing up as in hockey and you let a goal in, you can't get temperamental and all that. You're on to the next. In sports, that's how it is. Like you win some, you lose some, you hit some shots, you miss some shots, you make some saves, you don't. Like you got to go to the next step. Um, and then I credit an old ex girlfriend's dad for this. And I tell this story often. And I was in high school, and I remember sitting on the couch watching a movie with her, and her dad comes walking in and he's like has like spray paint on him and the exact story was like he just went out and got some cloths and she was like, hey dad, what happened? He's like, oh, the spray paint exploded, punctured, got all over the garage and all over. He had a like a 67 Stingray Corvette, like an antique, and he's like, got all over everywhere, it's all in the engine. And he's like, so I just had to get some rags, I'm gonna go clean it up. And I looked at her after he walked away, I was like, was that real life? Because like if that was my mother or father, they'd be like, F this, oh, la, 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 la. And he just like nonchalantly, he's like, oh yeah, the spray paint can exploded on the engine and got all over the garage and I got to clean it up. And then she's like, oh yeah, that's just my dad. She's like, because he's always told us getting mad doesn't fix the problem at hand. You look for a solution. I was just turned 40 last month. So yeah, like 14 years ago, that story, and it's just always stuck true. Um, I actually saw her a couple years back. She was working somewhere, and I actually ran into her, and I was like, "Hey, I tell that story about your dad all the time." And she's like, "I was like, he probably has no clue the effect it had on my life, but it just always stuck with me, and I carry that no matter what I do." Um, Also, my time at Lombardo's when I was there, we had a function facility that holds 1,800 people, 1,200, 1,800 people. We could have 4 events going on at once because we had 4 rooms going for weddings, for function, whatever it was. And it was like every event, something's going to happen that you don't expect. Just know that going into today, something's going to happen that you have no control over. You can't anticipate it. You can plan as much as you want for things to not happen, but something's going to happen. How you react to it and how you deal with it is all that matters. And I just do that at cage times. I mean, guys fall through the cage. I remember one guy's brother got knocked out and he tried to pick up a chair. Like, there's not always bad stuff that happens. There's unexpected. So it doesn't always have to be a negative. It can be anything unexpected coming up. You just have to keep a level head and be calm and just look at the situation and gather the information and just go for it. I would say that's probably my best attribute. My wife would tell you it's my worst. And a lot of people might say it's my worst. They're like, do you give a shit about anything? I'm like, I give a shit about a lot of stuff. I said, I just don't wear it on my outside. Because it doesn't solve anything. you know,
Mhm.
my wife is like here and she cares like everything she wants to control, and me, I'm just like, whatever. So we're good yin and yang to a certain extent.
It's a good balance. One thing that I really like about Cage Titans is that
We have a
you.
beautiful photographer.
Oh, wait, I thought I was still the photographer.
That's what I said. We have a beautiful photographer. Oh, you got jokes. You got jokes. I see how it is. I see how it is.
Yeah, I know. Which, if Tyler watches this, I think he set up the ladder so I could fall, but he came to my rescue and fixed it for me. So,
No, he's probably watching. He was actually the one who's like, hey, because Tyler's actually, I got to give a shout out to Tyler from Mental. He's one of my, through the COVID, I
mhm,
never knew him, probably prior to 4 or 5 years ago. Couldn't tell you who the hell he was.
mhm.
And my little brother Tyler, which I call Tyler, and Tyler Pimentel's new Tyler.
Oh,
My
jeez.
brother Tyler's like, hey, my brother Tyler used to set up the cage, and he was like, hey, this guy like said if we ever needed help, he'd come help us. He's like, do you care? And I'm like, who is it? He's like, I don't know, this guy Tyler. He comes to the fights. He saw me in the back room, said he'd help me set up, and I was like, sure, whatever, man. I'm like, I don't care. I was like, if somebody wants to help, and it went from that to us be developing a good friendship. And during COVID and things like that, we actually, he's one of the people that I did talk to often throughout COVID, and one of the people that are a small circle of friends that I do have.
Yeah, and the thing is, you fighters, fans, whomever is a part of Cage Titans that joins, they become family.
Yes.
And even after tragic events, you honor them, and it's very, it impacts a lot of people. Just it shows the love that you have. It shows the loyalty that you have. It shows that it's not just a moment type thing. Like, oh, as long as you're fighting for me, you know, I'll talk about you and help you. And then,
Yeah.
heaven forbid, something happens, nobody ever hears about them again, but you honor them and you respect them and you keep their memory going. And, it shows a lot. And not only to like the family, but it also shows just the type of person that you are, because not many people do that. Not many people, I mean, they don't. I've never seen it. And I've seen fighters that have gone to other shows and they've never done anything like that before. And it's
Yeah.
not a one time thing. It's like you do it continuously. And, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, you get me like a little worked up. Like, everybody knows I'm kind of an emotional guy, but like, I just remember like when I fought, I started Cage Titans strictly because I saw how some fighters got treated, and I said, listen, I need to give these. You're living a dream when it comes to fighting MMA. It's not like you can go play pickup basketball like with a bunch of buddies. Like, this is just something that is a little different. And some people, they all fight for different reasons, but this is a very important part of their life to be able to get that chance to compete in the cage and fight. And I just saw how people treated people, and I was just like, no, this isn't right. I want to give guys honest, nice place to win, fight. And again, there's a winner and a loser. I said it earlier. Like, I can't promise you're going to win. I can't promise you're going to lose. And hey, there might be a 70-30 chance you're going to lose. Like, yeah, as long as you're transparent and treat people the right way, that's what all Cage Titans is about. And John Connors, I got to give him a shout out. He came up to me one time. He's like, Mike, I've been doing this a long time. He's like, you're the only guy that's ever come up and shake the hands of the guy who loses. He's like, why did you? He's like, I've never seen anybody do that before. I was like, well, to put that show on out there, you need the guy who won and the guy who lost. Like, both guys are equally as important in this journey or this show. I would go out of my way more to shake the hand of the guys who didn't win than I would the winner. They're already going to have all their buddies, and they're going to be, yucking it up with them and telling them how great they are. Like, that poor guy in that moment backstage when he put it all out there and he came up short. Like, that's the one that needs the handshake or the pat on the back. So I always try to make, again, even out of state fighters, like, I go out of my way to make everybody feel important, because I say it from my heart. Like, all of us make Cage Titans. We are Cage Titans. It's not just a tagline. It's not just marketing. It's like, people like, oh, Mike, without you. It's like, well, no, without Iggy, who gets all those great photos that we can all document, without the cage crew, Tyler Pimentel and all his people that come in at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to set that up. And then they're there at 2 in the morning breaking it down.
Mhm.
The beer vendor, like the girls who we have for the beer vendors, the fans, the coaches, your sparring partners who don't get to compete that night, but they're kind of vicariously through you competing that night because they were there with you on the long ride.
Mhm.
Your girlfriend who you couldn't take out to dinner for 6 weeks of fight camp because you didn't want to be around food, or every night you were at the gym and you couldn't see your kids. Like everybody, we're all in this together, and all of us are an equal part in what happens on fight night. So I no other way to say it, but I just truly believe it. I truly believe it. And it's not just you see some guys are like, oh yeah, we love the fighters, we're for the fighters. Like, no, man, like they might be, but I believe this, and it's not just a ploy.
Mhm. I feel that you've built such a great foundation with this Cage Titans that you have fighters that respect you and will tell you, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to fight on your show because of X, Y, and Z, but there's another show coming." They run it by you just to make sure that there's no issues, because I've seen other promoters just like go off on fighters because, hey, you're fighting on Cage Titans, and it's like, hey, but you're not like this huge international UFC one championship type. Like, they don't have a contract with you.
I got a call
So,
today. I got a call today actually from a guy, and he was like, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about taking a fight," and I was just like, "Listen, man, if it's a great opportunity for you, it's a good opportunity. Like, take it. No hard feelings." I was like, "I don't care." I said, "We'll get you on the next one.
mhm,
Just if you want to be stuck with that promo, look at the fine, sign the contract and do what you want to do. But if you don't want to be stuck, make sure there's some verbiage in there that they might have that they're going to tie you to them. So be on the lookout for them." And they're like, "No, we want to fight for you. It's just that this show was so stacked. I couldn't get a card I couldn't get the
mhm,
right matchup for him." I was like, "So go take that, because I'm not going to have you sit on the sidelines. Like, these guys need fights." And I've never, in everyone that's fought for me, uh, can tell and attest this. I've never made a guy sign a contract. And they have to sign a contract with the state to
mhm,
say who they're fighting, and it's because they need documentation. But
mhm,
I've never signed a guy to a contract, multi-fight deals, try to tie him to me, because I want guys who want to fight for me. To your point, only because you brought it up, but I've had guys call me and they're
yeah,
like, so and so says I can't fight for you. I have to fight for them. I guess there was something if I won that my next fight or this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to be that person. Like,
mhm,
that on the other end, that's like, cool, this guy's fighting for me because he feels like the ball and chains tied to him and he has to. Like, everybody who wants to fight for me wants to fight for me. Whether, I see some guys getting slack sometimes, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just, I want guys that want to fight for us. I want people that want to be a part of something special, and they want to be a part of Cage Titans. And that's not to say, like, we talked about Johnny Campbell. Like, Johnny Cupcakes has fought for everybody. He's fought for, he went to Brazil, he went to Bellator, he went to CES. He's fought for anybody who would take him, and he's a good friend of mine. Like I said, I've known him longer than Cage Titans have been around. Um, when I first started training for my first fight, I was the one that brought him to the gym that I was going to, and was like, "Listen, you got to train here. You got to help me. Like, let's get ready." So, like, our relationship goes way back. But he's even fought for other people. It's like, listen, what if July 10th doesn't work for somebody? And they're like, "Well, I don't want to wait till August 28th. Oh, there you go. I guess I just dropped the next fight date. But, I don't want to wait till that date or whatever. Like, I think that's the right date. I just got it. I just got it today. So I think it's, August 28th and then November 6th. But anyways, but like, if they're like, "Hey, I got a wedding on July 10th. I can't
mhm,
fight." What am I going to say to them? Like, "Oh yeah, don't fight until August 28th and wait another 10, 11 weeks."
mhm,
Like, no, man, people want to get busy. They want to stay active. Like, the UFC window, we all know they have the Contender Ultimate Fighters back. Their window, they want 18 to 30.
yeah,
I know people's times are clicking, and they're like, "I need to stay active and stay busy." You know, I'm not going to hold people back. I would never do that. That's just utterly ridiculous. Like, we're here as a local promotion to help you achieve your dreams.
mhm,
Now, your dream might not be to the UFC. Now, if it is, you want to stay busy, you want to stay active, you want to do all those things. What if your goal is just to fight once? or twice, be a local champ. Maybe don't have amateur fights. Whatever your goal is, um, we respect that just as much. We're not going to treat just a guy that we think's next level UFC talent, better than we would treat the 1-1 amateur or the 0-1. We everybody gets a banner. Everybody gets, time to take over the Instagram. Everybody gets their picture taken. You're all, whatever your dream is in the sport of MMA, that's what we're here for. We're never going to hold anybody back.
Now, speaking of all these dates that you were throwing out there, July 10th is your
Yes.
next show. Is it a full card? Can fighters still get on it? I mean,
I
give
would
us
have.
details.
I mean, I will say that was probably my biggest difficulty was like everybody like there's so many guys out there. It's just like I can only do so much. And I think it showed in like my 2019, I'll call it the last real year because then 2020 really happened. Like our last year, like it was more shows, back-to-back nights, back-to-back weeks. And it was like expand. Every fighter who wants to fight in New England, we're getting and all that stuff. And it's just like this first one back, I will say, I'm not saying we might not get back to where we were pre-COVID, but it's just like, I had to be able to say no this time. Like, I was even kicking around the idea of doing multiple shows in July, back to back. And then it was just like, I had to step back. And it was like, I got a lot of fights and I can't really keep adding. And so the long and the short of it, probably not. There is like 1 or 2 holes that I need to fill. So if somebody wanted to reach, I will never say no to anybody that wants to reach out, but the card is pretty full, pretty full.
So if they can't get on this card, you mentioned August 28th?
Yes, August 20th. So we're going to try to get back, like I talked about earlier on the 10-week schedule, we're going to try to get back to that 10-week schedule. So July 10th, it's only going to be 7 weeks to get to August 28th, but then we're going to go back to 10 weeks to get us to November 6th because I didn't want to go 10 full weeks because then 10 full weeks would have brought me to the middle to late November. So we're going to do the 7 weeks to get us to August 28th. Then we're going to go back to the 10 weeks, which would bring us to November 6th. This show we actually were originally going to do pros only. We did sprinkle in some amateur fights on this card. August 28th, we'll have some amateur fights. We might start doing Muay Thai again. We may sneak a Muay Thai fight into this card. So that's what's going on. So if we can't get you on July 10th, you need to stay busy. I know there's 1 or 2 other fights later in the month, actually beginning of August. So it's, your choice. If you want to get on one of those cards because we couldn't fit you in, cool. If you want to wait for us, because by all means, we'd love to get you on a card. August 28th is the date. So if you want to stick around for that, and my priority this show was to get guys who weren't active over COVID. So like those guys kind of took a little bit higher priority on my matching ranking. So then obviously if somebody reaches out to try to get on July 10th, they'll be one of my first priorities for the August show. Example of that is like Joe Giannetti. He was able to fight a couple times through COVID to go into LFA. I wasn't able to get him a fight here on July 10th, but number one, I didn't feel as bad, though I wanted to have Joe back, but he already fought 2 times, 3 times during COVID. Some of these other guys on the card had no fights over COVID. But that being said, he'll now get pushed to the front of the line for August 28th as one of the first guys we get back and first guys we match for the next card. So that, kind of reward the fact that he waited and he did express interest to get on this card and we didn't have him on this card. So we'll push him to the next one. But he might still be active in between because I told him, I said, listen, go get a fight if you can. By all means, I'm not saying you have to wait till the August 28th. So, and we got a good relationship like that. There were some other guys like that too.
So we have July 10th, we have August 28th. And if they can't make it on any of those, you mentioned November 6th?
November 6th, yeah. So me, I mean, I always have such a hard time, saying no to people. So like, I'm not saying that we might not throw back-to-back cards again. I'm not saying that you might not see Grappling Titans again before the end of the year. my main focus is getting this first card back, and getting and trying to get some semblance of normalcy,
Mhm.
um, and kind of getting the process in order. In addition to trying to put the right pieces in place so that one of my biggest things, we've opened coops back up and all that, but one of my main focuses is trying to get everything out of here and out to people. Like Iggy, you're like, hey, what's going on with the show? And I'm like, oh, I didn't tell you. I'm like, oh shit. Like, like,
No, I
oh,
never know.
there's like a lot of stuff in my head, and you know it from working with me. And it's just
Yeah.
like a lot of stuff's in my head. And then it's all of a sudden you show up on fight night and I'm like, oh yeah, you got to do this, boom, 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 boom. All right, cool. See you later. And it's just like, I'm off to the next guy. And I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, I'm off to the next guy. I'm really trying to focus this fight card, putting people in place to help alleviate it and maybe streamline the process. It's like Mike doesn't have to answer everything. I can put people in place like,
Mhm.
hey, here's Brandy. Brandy's doing all the medicals. Don't ask me about the medicals. I'm going to tell you I don't know. I have no clue. That's what this person is. You want to get your social media, like this is what this person do. Or you want to get on Table Titans, Andy's the person. You want to talk about this is the person. So my main focus is getting the show off the ground, because I'll also be honest, like I forget how to do a show. I mean, not really, but it's when you haven't done something for over a year, it's like you're kind of getting back on the bike. You don't ever forget how to learn the bike, ride a bike, but you're also not going to go ride your bike in a friggin' triathlon, or you're not going to go ride a road race your first time jumping on a bike. You know how to ride it, but you're not going to start, like, you're not going in the deep end right away. So I think this show is more about getting back into the groove. We'll probably have 15 fights, not that mega card that we were doing before where it's like 18 to 20, you know. So, let's get this fight going. Let's get the pieces in place. Let's kind of get all our bearings back and, and then go from there. We'll see what the future holds for Cage Titans.
Now, with the pandemic and all the requirements, we're opening back up. How is it for you to be matching fighters out of state?
Well, I mean, May 29th, everything lifted as far as, the things are concerned. We do have some out of state fighters. Um, I really haven't gotten to the point where it has any effect on me so far. I'm still going to go on Expedia and book their tickets, and like, listen, if they have to COVID test to get back into their home state, like, I don't, like Rob Fuller, for instance. He's coming in from Colorado. Like, he's already fought during COVID. I reached out to him actually, and I was like, listen, you fought like 4, 5, 6 times. Like, what was it like with COVID for this? And he's like, oh, it was fine. One place tested me, one place didn't. In Massachusetts, I mean, you're gonna land and you're gonna go to the fighter hotel and you're gonna fight. And when you fly home, if you're in a state that makes you sit there and test or quarantine, I mean, that's kind of on them. I don't know their rules and regulations here, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what I've seen from the government, it's the restrictions were lifted May 29th. So I don't have to really worry too much about it, because I did have to put a proposal in because we applied for the show before everything was lifted. So I did have to submit a plan to the Department of Public Health and explain, how many people we're going to have, exactly down to the exact number of employees and ushers and fans and fighters and corners, that I was going to test the fighter in their corners. They'd have to provide a negative COVID test within 24 hours, or then it turned into they'd have to show their vax card. Then once May 29th rolled around, it was just like, okay, don't worry about that anymore. You can go to full capacity and everything's back to normal. There was a commission meeting yesterday. I did ask them if anything needed to be done from their concern, and they basically just said, listen, we're there to do the fights. Any venue restrictions or any of that is on the venue. It's on them. We're not getting involved. So that's a good sign.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
Hey, listen, I mean, you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Like, it's your decision, and Actually, I went to Memorial Hall yesterday to drop off some banners. One of my favorite times of the years or a show is when I drop the banners off at
Mhm.
Memorial Hall and they go up front because it's like, wow, this is real. Like Plymouth's ready. Like
Yes.
the banners are up, and they have a sign right on the side. They're like, if you're not vaccinated, in accordance with the CDC, wear your mask. We will not ask you to that
Mhm.
if you're vaccinated. We will not ask you to show a vaccination card. It's you know do what makes you comfortable kind of thing. And it's like we have no right to ask you, and we do what you got to do. And so I think a lot of places are like that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the stance that the hall's taken, and that's kind of where we're going to be at.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share with everybody before we conclude with the interview?
Yeah. So hey, this was super cool. It was nice. As you know, we did table time. So I've like, usually I'm like in the driver's seat. Sorry, I always talk. I'm a very talkative person. So if I jumped on your questions a little too long, but no, this was fun. I would just say get your tickets. Uh, Yesterday we opened up online ticketing, and we had the largest sales in one day that we've ever had. Today actually exceeded yesterday. Now, I'm not talking huge numbers. People are like, oh, it's going to be sold out by the weekend. you know, we don't
No.
typically sell a lot of online tickets. We're talking about like 25. Like for one show, like we'll sell 100 online maybe. Again, I'm an open book. I'm not trying to hide anything. It's not insider secrets. I think the most we sold on one show was like 119 online because most of the fighters, they're buying tickets from the fighters.
Yeah.
Just yesterday and today alone, we've already sold 50. So it's like, the most we've ever done was like 120, and we did in 2 days 50. So it's a sign that people are getting their tickets early. They're going online. They really want to get a part of the show. So I would just say get your tickets early. Don't wait around. Because we could be in a situation where we're sold out before we even open the doors. We've sold out prior to open the doors before, but it's usually that morning, like after weigh-ins, and we tabulate all the tickets, and then the morning ticket sales, and then it's like, all right, boom, we're done, we're sold out. We've never been technically sold out prior to fight week, but we could be in a situation like that. I think people are rip roaring, ready to go out, ready to have a
Mhm.
good time. So just and you can heed my advice. You can say it's promoter talk or not, but if you know me long enough, I'm not a bullshitter. You never hear me say, "Oh, this is the biggest event ever and my best fight card ever." I'm just being real with you. I think that I've witnessed it with the restaurant business. People are just ready to get out.
Mhm.
And if yesterday, in the amount of text messages I've been getting and Instagram messages, um, and Facebook, all that, like, how do you get tickets? How do you get tickets? How do you get tickets? Where can I get tickets? It's like, I've never seen this kind of demand 4.5 weeks out from a show. So it's real. It's not promoter talk. It's like, I'll get your tickets early.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Send my love to the family,
Oh yes,
and
yes.
looking
Same
forward
here.
to
Am I
seeing
gonna
you
see?
guys.
I'm gonna see your niece at the show.
Of course.
Oh, she better be there. Your little assistant running around. And hey, thank you for everything. Like I seen that. You've been taking you expanding your role. Like I remember before, you were just like the kind of photographer and waiting, kind of like would show up to the shows, and then you became our main photographer, and now you're doing these podcasts and getting Fighter Story out. It's really cool to see like you evolve and trying to give back to this great MMA community. So it's pretty cool. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. And you don't have a booth this time, right?
No, 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 no.
We're not
I
going to
got
have matching booths.
no, no. It's so funny. Like that was a while ago. It's crazy. But yeah, you're all healed up. You're ready to roll. And um, yeah, it's. I was talking about you the other day too, because I was reminiscing with somebody, and we were talking about photography, and I was like, yeah, I was like, we talk about loyalty and people being around for a long time, and it was like Rich O was our photographer for the longest time, and Kelly was the person that kind of like hung around and was like, "Oh, I want to be the photographer. I want to be the photographer." And it was like, "Well, Rich is next in line. Rich is the job. You're next in line." And then Kelly became the girl, and then you were there, and then it was like Kelly's gone. Now you were here, and then you kind of had like Martina, who was like the old kind of hanging around, and and it's funny the evolution of cage titans and how we've seen people grow up. Another story I was talking about you with the other day, Peter Barrett. mentioned, he's like, why do you always use the ugly picture? He's very upset. He's like, I always pick the most ugly picture of him. So I said, listen, I always go back on the fight posters and the announcement to the show that you last fought on. Now, so he's not happy with his last photo, but it's not yours. He just thinks he looks bad. But what I was saying to him, sometimes I don't use the last photo. Sometimes it also is depending on when the person you're fighting last fought for us.
Mm-hmm.
And where I find the interesting part is like, if somebody hasn't fought for Cage Titans like maybe 2 or 3 years, and I find their Iggy picture from 2 or 3 years ago, or even a year ago, and then like the other fighter fought on my last card, it's like you can see the difference in your quality of work from 2, 3 years ago, even 6 months ago to what it is today. So like, as I was explaining to him why the pitches I picked the ones that I do, like Ali Zabian fought 4 shows ago. So if you fought on the same card as Ali, because Iggy's quality and lighting was the same on that particular day, though you might have a more recent shot, I might have picked the Ali picture because you guys both fought, and I know the lightings matches, the contrast matched, and the quality that Iggy was producing at that time is pretty much similar. And then I run into a situation with like Billy Goff and Lally. I had a picture from Lally, and he was kind of like washed out. And then at the time when you shot Billy, it was a lot more contrasting. And I was like, see this picture, how off they are? Like, you can see the difference in these. So it's just like, I don't know. Everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about? But maybe you know what I'm talking about. Like,
but I did take some pictures of Sean Lally.
Yes.
He just didn't fight because his fighter went MIA.
Yes, and he actually did that again last weekend. I just read it. But yeah, you did have. So that was
there. What happens in that situation?
When the fighter walks and just leaves the venue and doesn't fight.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a certain amount of, passes, I guess.
I will say this. I will always you never know somebody's story or situation. And I'm notorious for giving guys chances. He screwed a lot of people over in the past, and he just never did that to me. When he said he was going to fight, he would show up. He never did that to me until the one time he did, and egg on my face, whatever. But when he was going to fight Joe, he fought Dan Dubuque. He fought for us a couple times and never screwed us over. So like, yeah, he might have done to other people, but I'm a firm believer. I don't know what their scenario was. Shane Stevenson, who's passed away, but I remember when he was just an amateur, like my first 2 or 3 years with Cage Titans, I had a promoter call me up and like, oh, he screwed me over, this, that, and the other thing. And I was just like, well, he's fought for me like 3 or 4 times. Like he's always pretty stand-up-ish. And then I get a call from Shane, and he tells me the side of the story that the promoter didn't want to tell me. And it was like, that's why I really left. So sometimes you don't know the full story. So I always try to give people a chance. Disappeared for the Sean Lally. Any energy I waste in trying to get him suspended or whatever, it's just wasted energy. So, you fool me, shame on you. And I'm not, I didn't go after him. I wasn't trying to get him suspended, badmouth him. It's not worth it. It's like, come on, what does it accomplish? It's not worth it. So that's your answer. I didn't do anything. I mean, Sean was cool. Sean knew the situation. Again, it goes back to that transparency that we talked about earlier. Like, it's just like, hey, listen, man, here's the deal. This freaking kid showed up, weighed in, said he was going to get it, asked me for $20, asked to go grab some food because he weighed in on fight day because he couldn't show up to weigh-ins because something happened with his car. And we all thought, all right, whatever. He shows up on fight day, gets on the scale. He's like, hey, I haven't eaten all day because I knew I had to weigh in. Can I go get some food? Can I get $20? I gave him $20, and he never showed back up. He must have needed that $20 pretty bad.
Well, that's
he probably wasted more money getting here because he lives in Rhode Island. He definitely spent more than $20 in gas to go from Rhode Island to Plymouth Moore at all. But whatever, we'll all laugh.
Yeah, no, it's a good point that you say that because I know there's always another side to the story.
Yeah.
And it's a good point because I know I was at a show where it was kind of like a similar situation about a fighter. And, he weighed in and then he left and then he came back. And then he was I think the main event or co-main event or something. And then it
Yeah.
got called off. But everybody was like, oh my gosh, like talking a lot of crap. They didn't give him a chance, but I guess his father had passed away and he got that call at the show. So
Yeah.
that's why he's like, yeah, I can't fight, which is understandable.
But then the promoter's probably sitting there yelling at your face. You're already here. You already have all these people here, and you better fight. I don't know if that in that scenario, but
No,
like
in
I
that
said,
scenario, they accepted because they knew the night before that he
they
was
were
like in
sick.
critical
Oh, that's
conditions.
good
They
then.
weren't
That's good.
sure. But media aspects, they
Yeah.
kept, giving them their little twist and making it more entertaining.
Yeah. All right. I've heard that story too. All right. I'm wondering if it's the same thing I'm thinking about. And it is. It's all right. Hey, listen, man, he lived it. He knows what it was. And
Yeah.
he knows in his heart what really happened. And no one else, and that's a tricky situation though. Like, what do you do? Do you want to campaign and start like,
Yeah.
like trying to tell people that do they really matter in your life? Like,
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't believe me that my dad died or whatever, and like you're going to talk about it in the media and badmouth me, it's like, what do you do? Like, are you going to go campaign? No, I don't know. So it's interesting to hear the story. I never really paid it much mind. I've never
Yeah.
had that fight or flight for me, but I am a firm believer in that there's a couple sides to there's three sides of, I think my
Yeah.
mother told me, my side, your side, and the truth.
Yes.
So
Yes.
interesting.
How are you going to do with accepting applications or however you do for media?
I don't know. Pretty much. Again, it's one of those things where like I'm trying to get it out of my head. And before it was like, hey, Mike, I want to come by and photograph, or I want to come by and do this, and that was, oh yeah, no problem. As I try to get back to like kind of streamlining process, I haven't really thought that. I would say as I could say right now, it's probably the same. Shoot me a message. Hey, I'm coming. There's certain people that I kind of always know are coming.
Mm-hmm.
As I don't want to sound like a jerk, but like as our shows get larger,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had this scenario happen a couple times, recently. I say recently, recent terms of cage size. 2020 didn't happen. Where we're so close and like we're so oversold or sold out, where it's like, for me to give a ticket to somebody in the media or multiple tickets, it's like, well, at a certain point, you have to do a little something for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking you to dance. It's like just share some of our stories or write a story yourself. It's like if some people aren't even doing that, but then on
Mm-hmm.
fight night they want to kind of hit me up and be like, oh, can I get a cage side seat for media? It's like, like. So I would say for right now, it's just kind of the same process. Hit me up, let me know what you're looking for, and go from there. I give it, and I'm a little, I guess I don't want to end on this note, but I say this for a reason. Like our fighters, you have unprecedented access to our fighters. We're Cage Titans, and we do a tremendous job. Like I've joked before, we're a marketing company first, that we just have fights that go on.
Mm-hmm.
And all of our fighters are aware of this. We make them, super in tune with the fact that they need to do media, do interviews. There'll be some won't talk, but for the majority, like if you want to do something on one of our fighters, they're going to talk to you. You can get some, everyone has cool stuff. I'll dance, Mike. Yeah, there you go. All right, cool. I'd like to see that. But, it's like, we've done press conferences.
Intermission.
Yeah, we do press conferences. We have the press conference room in the back. For every winner goes through that press conference. So if we're giving you these opportunities to be media, then take those opportunities to be media. Like, I don't like. I think old school media used to be like, oh, well, I'll just write a review. Well, like, or play by play, and I like those by all means. I'm not saying I don't like those, but I think that's just kind of like an old school media thought process. Like nowadays, like you just go on Facebook and you can see who won. Like you can go and stream it. You can follow their stories on Instagram. You're going to probably see parts of the fight. So like, I think the real media aspect is interviewing a fighter before the fight, writing a story about that fight. Like, I'm partial to it, but like we have a great girls fight, women's fight, Justin Valentine, and taking on Ashley Barrett. Like sorry, Erica Valentine. I said Justin, but Justin's her brother. Her
That's why I
cousin
was like,
was Yeah, her cousin was Jose Lopez, who actually fought, which is kind of a cool little thing. It's funny. Zach Steele reminded me. She's like, "Tell that you beat her cousin's ass," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You fought Johnny Lopez. That's her cousin." I'm like, "Oh," I was like, "Number one, I didn't beat his ass. I won, but I didn't beat his ass." I was like, but it's kind of funny. But like, she comes from a fight family. That's a cool
yeah.
story to tell. Ashley Barrett, she's an up and comer locally. She's already fought for us in Muay Thai. She fought for MMA. It could be a cool little story, and no
Hmm.
one else is probably going to tell that story. Knowing how Erica got into fighting, was it because she saw her brother? Was it her cousin's been fighting longer? Was it because she saw him? Like, what goes on in that family that they're all fighters? Like, that's a fun story that no one would know, but somebody, it'd be cool to tell that story.
Hmm.
So, that's what I look for in media. Like, when we do a press conference, send us some questions, or log in and ask some questions yourself. Like, we're given the opportunities. I don't think those opportunities were around when I was fighting, or earlier in the days. It was like, I remember going to like Mass MMA and watching the play-by-play because I couldn't watch the fight anywhere. So it was like, and if I wasn't there because I was at work, it was like, refresh. Oh, somebody so-and-so won round one. But, that still has its part, but there's more that you could do besides
Yeah.
just coming on fight night. Because if I have 5 guys writing a play-by-play, I don't know if I necessarily need that. But let's challenge you guys. Like, we're challenging our fighters to raise their bar. We're raising our bar. Let's challenge the media to also kind of raise their bar and get out there and do some stuff out of their comfort zone. So sorry.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, city boy, I'll take you up on your dancing offer. I like that. I like to see you shaking that green shirt.
Is that going to be the intermission?
It could be. It could be. Yeah, those guys have been great. Those guys have been around forever. I mean, they started off as like Team Ravenous's website or whatever it was. Joe Leonard and Jeremy Repold and Travis and all those guys. Like, they're like the OGs now. Like, they've been around forever. So yeah, you're good, man. We're always cool with you guys.
Awesome.
But I won't say no to it and stuff.
No? Okay. We'll ask your wife to see.
Yeah. She'll probably throw the dollars at you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Have a wonderful night.
All right. You have a great night. And I cannot wait to
Thank
see you on July 9th at the weigh-ins.
Are you going to do a press conference for the fighters?
We probably will do a press conference. So stay tuned on that, because that was such a cool thing, because I mean, it was a nice opportunity to get to see these fighters before the fights. So the tricky part with that is, getting the guys to come in, like usually like the out-of-state fighters. Like the first press conference we did, it was like we had 2 guys fighting that were local. So it was like no brainer. Let's get them in front of the Memorial Hall and do a press conference. Then we had some issues with internet outside. Then we did it at Tavern. It was amazing. But the tricky part is like trying to time it. Like, so I'm asking a fighter who's local now, like let's take Ali Zabian, for instance. Is he going to drive out the day before weigh-ins, do a press conference, then drive home 2 hours, go do his weight cut, drive back the next day, do the weigh-ins, drive back home, and then come back on fight night? So we did some hotels and stuff like that, but then some other shit happens where it's like, well, this fighter can't fly until Thursday night. So well, if your opponent's not going to be there, is it worth doing this? There's a lot to go into it. So as we get probably in the next week or two, I'll kind of, tighten that up, because in the main event, Estelle's coming in from out of state. Janus is living in Missouri now. So when's he coming in? When's Estelle going to want to come in? Co-main event, I just mentioned Ali. He's local, but he lives out in the Springfield area. Barrett lives 20 minutes from Memorial Hall, so that's not an issue. Lally, I believe he lives in New Hampshire, so he's local, but he lives in New Hampshire. Billy Goff's from Connecticut. The local, he's a drive-in, but he's going to want to drive in too. So there's some things we'll have to work out. I'm not saying no. I think they're awesome. I think we've got some awesome sound bites. It gets the blood flowing, and I love it. And if we can do it, and pull it off, I'm all game. Yeah, there you go. You better. Now you have to be there because you're the one that recommended it.
I'll be there, but you need to tell me when it is.
All right. Well, I got to decide.
You can't.
On my normal day before, hey, you're going to be there tomorrow? That
You tell me the day of, and it's like, what? What just happened?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
I'm in a world that sometimes my wife says that to me. She's like, you're just in your own world, and you think this is people can pull this shit out of your head, and without telling. She's like, you never told me that. Like today, she's like, you never told me you were going to work this morning. And I was like, yeah, I did. I went to work last night. So since I went to work last night, I wasn't going to go to work tonight, but I was going to go during the day. She's like, you must have had that conversation, played that out in your head because you never told me. And I was like, no, I think I did. She's like, no, you didn't. So that's part of progressing as a human being. I'm trying to do this a lot better and vocalize and not live in my own world and let people into my world when they need to be.
Oh, jeez.
If I don't leave, I'm going to keep talking. And I find all my kids, I can hear one of my kids upstairs, like stomping around.
He's like, yes!
And I'm going to be like, you better go to, so I'm going to go upstairs and show the bad side of dad if he's not asleep.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to go upstairs and kind of covers over his head and be like, I was sleeping.
He's like, it wasn't me.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And there you go, July 10th. Make sure you follow us on all our social media. I say that all the time. Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. I guess we're starting a TikTok. We haven't started it yet, but I guess we're doing a TikTok because all the young kids are doing TikToks nowadays. Yeah. So be on the lookout on our social media, and we'll see you on July 10th.
Awesome. Have a great night, Mike.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.